Welcome back to HQ. Two of the top teams in college basketball ending the weekend very differently. Alabama losing to Texas A&M. The Tide taking their first lead of the game with under 5 to go and not helping matters out. Forward Brandon Miller fouled out with about 2 minutes remaining, and the Aggies would go on to win it. Meanwhile, Houston extends their winning streak to 11 games after beating Memphis at FedEx Forum. Jamal Shead with the buzzer beater to win it for the Cougars, but there was some controversy on that shot. Did he get away with the push-off? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Either way, Houston wins. And Houston and Bama still on the one line in Jerry Palm's latest bracketology, along with Kansas and Purdue. Kansas with the most Quad 1 wins there at 15. Houston with the least Quad 1 wins. They're 5-1 in Quadrant 1. And then Purdue 9-4 in Quad 1 and Bama 9-5. All right, and we're getting excited. Selection Sunday, it's just a few days out, and we have Jerry Palm and Garry Parrish here to discuss all the crazy things we saw this weekend and, of course, previewing the postseason. So Bama losing to A&M. They're still a 1 seed, Jerry, in your bracketology, and then also in the SEC tournament. How concerning is a loss like that right before you get into the postseason? Do you think that's going to affect their momentum at all, Jerry?
Probably not. You know, they had wrapped up the conference, and so they may have just had a letdown. And obviously, Texas A&M is trying to make a statement. So, and it's a home game, so for A&M. So I don't think you get too concerned. One loss in a row is not a problem. You know, if they get another one, then that becomes a problem.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about Alabama losing at Texas A&M. I think a lot of teams would have lost at Texas A&M this past weekend. To me, the more concerning thing is, the truth is, and there's no other way to put it, ever since it became publicly known that Brandon Miller, Alabama star freshman, delivered a gun to a scene where it was very quickly after he arrived used to kill a 23-year-old mother, ever since that became publicly known, Alabama has not really played well, certainly not as well as it's played earlier in the season. You know, the first game after that was testified to in court, they went to South Carolina and got pushed to the limit there by a bad South Carolina team. They struggled at home with Arkansas. They went down big to Auburn before rallying to win that game, and then obviously didn't play too well at Texas A&M over the weekend. So to me, what that suggests is that all of these distractions that program has been dealing with has had an impact on the court product. It doesn't mean that given this little break, they can't reset and get refocused in advance of the SEC tournament and win that and perhaps go deep into the bracket once we start the NCAA tournament. But we have a couple of weeks sample size now of Alabama not playing the way Alabama played to put itself in this position.
Another team on the one line in Jerry's bracketology is Houston. We saw the highlight there, the Cougars winning in Memphis on that buzzer beater. Now, when it comes to Memphis, they're a bubble team, and yeah, a loss is a loss. But, I mean, Garry, they're losing to the best team in the country. So with that in consideration, how much does that really impact Memphis and their position where they're coming that close to beating a team like Houston?
Well, a loss is a loss. Jerry Palm will be the first to tell you that. But all losses are not created equal, and I think it is important that Memphis has played Houston tough twice, also played Alabama at Alabama to a one-possession game. I mean, that's 3 games where we have examples of Memphis being in a position to maybe win against schools that are projected to be number 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. Beyond that, of Memphis's 8 losses, 5 of them are by 3 points or less. And so even in their losses, for the most part, they've been really, really competitive. I'd hesitate to call Memphis a lock for the NCAA tournament right now, if only because there is a scenario where they could take a quadrant 4 loss in the AAC quarterfinals and really, create a problem for themselves as it pertains to presenting that at-large resume to the selection committee. But barring something like that, and perhaps even something like that on the resume, I feel comfortable thinking that Memphis is going to be in the NCAA tournament for the second consecutive year under Penny Hardaway. Simply put, you've got to find 36 at-large candidates to fill this bracket out, and I don't think on Selection Sunday you're going to be able to find 36 that have better bodies of work than the body of work the Tigers have presented so far in this season.
Yeah, I agree. Texas A&M and Auburn are non-conference wins for Memphis, and I think that really helps. If they didn't have those wins, then you'd be asking a lot of questions. Memphis has a couple of silly losses, an inability to beat Tulane, and they have a quad 3 loss against Tulane at home. But I don't think they have to beat Houston to make the NCAA tournament, and it's a good thing because their next opportunity against Houston would be in the conference championship game if both teams get there. So I think Memphis is going to be okay based on the strength of those non-conference wins, as long as they don't take another bad loss in the conference tournament.
All right, talking about the 2 seeds, Jerry, in your bracketology, Texas is one of those teams. If they can win out and win the Big Ten tournament, what do you think that does for them in terms of seeding come Selection Sunday?
Well, I think it would put them in play for a number 1 seed. It would depend on, first of all, who did they beat to get there? I think they would have to beat Kansas again in order to make that case for a number 1 seed. They've already got 8 losses, so that's kind of a high number for this group of teams. So they might need a little bit of help beyond that. But if Texas can win all the way out and win the Big 12 tournament and beat Kansas doing so, then I think, first of all, they've got a case to be ahead of Kansas at the very least, and maybe a number 1 seed.
The interesting thing about the Big 12 tournament is that literally every game everybody plays in that event is going to qualify as a quadrant 1 game because these teams all rank inside of the top 100 of the net, and all of these games are technically going to be played on a neutral court. So if you just play it out, like if Texas were to win the Big 12 tournament, the Longhorns would add 3 quadrant 1 wins, and they would suddenly be 14-8 in quadrant 1, 18-8 in the first 2 quadrants, with 0 losses outside of quadrant 1. Like Jerry said, I think that would put them in position to maybe make a case for a number 1 seed. But my guess in this moment is that on Selection Sunday, you're going to have a group of Houston, UCLA, Kansas, Alabama, Purdue, and 4 of those 5 teams are going to be number 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. It's not impossible for somebody else to crack that top 5, but it does seem unlikely.
All right, Jerry Palm and Garry Parrish breaking down some of the crazy endings to college basketball's regular season and, of course, previewing the postseason. You can find Jerry's latest bracketology on CBSSports.com, and you can hear Garry Parrish alongside Matt Norlander on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. In the latest episode, the guys are recapping the weekend, giving you some postseason previews and, of course, some bubble winners and losers. You can download wherever you get your podcast, or you can scan that QR code on your screen. Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ. Of course, it is that time of the year, and we are talking college basketball. Our Jerry Palm, he's a busy guy when it comes to March, and these are his last 4 teams in and the first 4 teams out in his latest bracketology. So the last 4 in, he's got Penn State, Mississippi State, Utah State, and Michigan. Penn State coming off of beating Northwestern and Rutgers there, or Maryland, excuse me. And then the first 4 out, we have Wisconsin, Oklahoma State, UNC, and Arizona State. And we have the man himself, Jerry Palm, and Garry Parrish back with us here on HQ to talk about some of those bubble teams. First, we're going to talk about the last 4 in. Penn State, a big couple of games for them, wins over Northwestern, wins over Maryland. Jerry, we'll start with you. Do you think Penn State is going to bring that same momentum into the Big Ten tournament?
Well, they have to. But they got those big wins right after a devastating home loss to Rutgers. So that's a really nice rebound for Penn State, and it shows that they're ready to fight to try and stay in this NCAA tournament. They get Illinois, a team that they annihilated at Illinois and then beat again at Penn State. And if they get by Illinois, then they get Northwestern, and they won their only meeting with Northwestern as well. So a lot of positive mojo for Penn State going into the Big Ten tournament. But they're probably going to have to do something to ensure that they stay in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody had a more significant week over the past week than Penn State. Not just winning 2 games, but winning 2 games at the buzzer that are quadrant 1 opportunities. In other words, they were on the verge of taking 2 more quadrant 1 losses, and instead they flipped them into quadrant 1 wins. And so there's a alternative universe right now where Penn State is 3-8 in the first two quadrants. As it is, they're 5-6 in the first two quadrants on the right side of the bubble, according to Jerry. I think he's right. If they want to feel safe on Selection Sunday, probably need to at least beat Illinois in the Big Ten tournament. That might be enough, but I wouldn't sleep easy at Penn State unless I got that first one under my belt.
And we have a bubble matchup there. Michigan, also a team in the last four-in section there against Rutgers in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. Michigan recently losing to IU, Rutgers losing to Northwestern. Jerry, who do you think has more to prove here when it comes to Michigan and Rutgers?
Well, Rutgers is the one that's behind. You know, they've faded late in this season, despite that win against Penn State. This has not been a good end of season for Rutgers. And, yeah, they're not at full strength. That's no small part of it. But Michigan has got the upper hand. And Michigan needs this game, too. They don't have a great record. They've done well against some of their better competition. They've got a horrible quad 4 loss, but they're only 17-14. So they've got to stack some wins as well. It's an important game for both teams, but Rutgers definitely needs it more. And Rutgers needs more than to just beat Michigan.
Yeah, it's not technically an elimination game for the NCAA tournament. The sport doesn't work that way, but for all intents and purposes, it kind of is, because I don't think, and I think Jerry would agree with this, that the loser of that game between Michigan and Rutgers is going to find itself on the right side of the bubble on Selection Sunday. Perhaps, it's all a process that will play out over the next week, but I'm not sure the winner of the game makes the NCAA tournament, but I feel comfortable suggesting that the loser is going to be a really good NIT team. So that's a massive early Big Ten tournament game because the stakes are obviously high and I think pretty easy to identify.
All right, let's talk about some of the first four out teams. Jerry, you have Wisconsin as one of those teams facing Ohio State in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. What needs to happen at Big Tens for Wisconsin in order for them to be in a better position when it comes to seeding for the NCAAs?
Well, they have to do something they have struggled to do, and that's win 2 games in a row. Ohio State is not an NCAA tournament team. You have to win that game. And then they get a shot at, I believe, Iowa. And, you've got to try and beat Iowa, too. I mean, Wisconsin has really been inconsistent. The metrics don't like them because they play a lot of close games, a ton of close games, probably 2/3 of their games inside of 10-point margins. But they've just been hit and miss. They've been bad at home. At least they don't have to play any more home games. They've been okay away from home. It's a very difficult resume to look at and think, yeah, this is really an NCAA tournament team. So they're going to have to do a little bit of damage in the Big Ten tournament if they're going to really make a case for that.
All right, another first four out team, UNC. It's kind of crazy that we're talking about UNC in this position. Only one quad 1 win at this point over Virginia. Gary, how can UNC make the NCAA tournament? What do the Tar Heels have to do?
They might have to win the ACC tournament and get the automatic bid from that league at this point. Although I would not rule out if the Tar Heels could find themselves in the championship game of the ACC tournament and take a loss there that would presumably be a quadrant 1 loss that maybe, just maybe, that might be good enough. It feels like it's over for them outside of an automatic bid, considering they are 1-9 in quadrant 1. But, I think Jerry would tell you that they're not that far from the right side of the bubble. Can they get there? I'm not certain. I tend to think at this point you are what you are, and that's been a pretty mediocre basketball team all season. I don't expect them to get to the championship game of the ACC tournament. But if they do, depending, of course, on what else happens around the country, perhaps there is a scenario where maybe a loss in the title game would be enough to find them in the bracket, perhaps in the first 4. But if you're Hubert Davis right now, the only thing that is certainly safe is go win all the games you play in this tournament and cut nets and get the automatic bid.
Arizona State now 20-11 heading into the Pac-12 tourney, losing their last 2 games rather. Jerry, they're kind of on the outside looking in at this point.
Yeah, it's been a hit and miss season for Arizona State. They've had a big hit. They won at Arizona. That's what's kept them afloat right now. But they're going to need to do something here in the Pac-12 tournament. Obviously, you can't lose to Oregon State in the opener, but if they get past them, they get a third chance at USC. They were swept by both LA schools during the regular season, which is part of why they're in the predicament they're in, and in particular behind USC. So they're going to need to get past USC, and they may need to get even further than that. But that's a minimum before we can even really take Arizona State seriously as a potential NCAA tournament team.
All right, Jerry Palm and Garry Parrish joining us here on CBS Sports HQ, breaking down Jerry's latest bracketology. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it. You can find Jerry's latest bracketology on CBSSports.com. Jeremy, look at all of those good-looking people.
Look at them.
I know.
Wow.
With Selection Sunday just a few days away, make sure you join the CBS Sports HQ Bracket Challenge. You can compete against the HQ crew. Just scan that QR code that you see on your screen. I don't know if I'm going to put up a tough fight. I really try, but my track record in brackets isn't great, but, who knows. Getting a quick look at the NCAA Tournament automatic bids. As far as teams, we got UNC Asheville, Drake, Kennesaw State. Those are in there. We have the Sun Belt and SoCon championship games tonight.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.